Hi everyone, so last Epoch cycle 1.1 has been out for around a week now and I've been going pretty ham. As you can see, I have a level 100, that was a hardcore shaman, also level 96 hardcore rogue. I tried to go for the world first Aberroth kill, which I nearly got. I got the world second after dying world first to Aberroth. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, that was a really cool experience. I really love what EHG has done here with this patch, and I want to give a bit of my impressions of like how I feel about Last Epoch now in patch 1.1. I have played it a lot in 1.0 and a little bit in early access here and there over the years. I kind of kept track of the game and a little bit of attention to it basically on the side. And in patch 1.0, I went really crazy. I played like 300 plus hours or something in 1 month, and I made like multiple characters, multiple builds, and tried everything basically. And I do have to say, I really like where the game is going, I gotta say. So I was sponsored to play Last Epoch by EHG and to make a bit of content and stuff, but I'm really thoroughly enjoyed my time playing Last Epoch for at least this week that I have been playing it now. I'm about to head to USA to play the Spiritborn and the Deep 4 expansion, so this is probably the end of my 1.1 Last Epoch journey here. And maybe I'll do a little bit more when I come back, but that depends on the timing and what other stuff comes up. But for now, I do have to say I would definitely play more Last Epoch if I had a bit more time. So this is kind of where it's at right now. A lot of people ask me, do I like Diablo 4 more or do I like Last Epoch more? Is Diablo 4 dead? Because now I'm playing Last Epoch. Well, the answer is Diablo 4 is very far from dead. And I do like both games quite a lot, but for different reasons. They both have their strengths, they both have their weaknesses. So just kind of as a general statement, Last Epoch does some things much better than Diablo 4, and Diablo 4 does some better than Last Epoch. That's just how it is. And both have their own strengths here. But when it comes to Last Epoch, I gotta say one of my main concerns that I had and one of my main gripes with the game was that the endgame felt way too repetitive and the grind was not really rewarding enough. So when I played back in 1.0 with my Falconer, I pushed to like 1000 corruption on hardcore with it, and I played it for like over 100 hours on one single build, which is relatively long for my standards, because I usually like to, min-max builds and then move on to the next one, and then, make new builds all the time. So this is what I do basically in any RPG. And once I get to the point where I'm stagnating, then I'm kind of done. And I reached that point fairly early back in 1.0. After like 50, 60 hours or so, I kind of just stopped getting upgrades, at least from a Circle of Fortune player, like a solo self-found player perspective. With trade, you can always strive for more with the Merchant's Guild, but this is not really a thing on hardcore, I guess. And for me, it is much more about finding the loot than it is about buying the loot. So I just like that in general. And it turns out that after some point, you just don't really get anywhere anymore. So that was really something I disliked in 1.0, and it felt like too repetitive. There was not really much going on in the echoes, in the monoliths, and it feels like that has massively improved in 1.1 now. We got the Nemesis system. Nemesis are these like little elites that spawn in the map sometimes, and they can give you potentially really strong items, but they're very random. And sometimes you find one of these and they have like more stats than you could ever have on like your own craft. So they go basically beyond the regular power level of an item that is not like a 1 in a million lottery craft basically. It can happen, I guess, but there could even be potentially outcomes from the Nemesis that are actually unachievable with your own crafting. So the RNG potential is very high, and this makes it kind of interesting, because sometimes you find these items and it's like not really the right base that you wanted in your setup. It doesn't really have the right stat that you wanted in your build, but somehow it kind of comes together as a strong item with like a really high budget, and you think, hey, I should probably include that in my build now. And then you try to build other pieces around those, once in a lifetime kind of items that you get from the Nemesis system. So that is really cool. And in addition to that, they also allowed you to use the legendaries or like uniques that have no legendary potential. And you can stick them into the egg for the Nemesis and just gamble with them. And that is really fun. I actually made a bunch of these items that I then tried to equip and, actually use for my character. I found like some uniques that I really liked, and I was like, oh man, no legendary potential on them. well, you just stick them in the egg, and more often than not, they get legendary potential, and then you can go to Jura dungeon and get something cool out of it. So that was really nice. So I really enjoyed that part of it. It just made the gear grind as a whole way more interesting and not necessarily shorter. You might think, oh, you get like crazy items way faster now thanks to the Nemesis, but it didn't really feel that way. Like, okay, you know, I know the game better now, I'm just more efficient in general, I've been playing good builds, and I was kind of at a, you know, realistic high-end target after like 40 hours, 50 hours yet again with my characters, and this is kind of like where you cap out basically with Circle of Fortune, and after that you can't really expect more upgrades. So this is how that works, but it just felt way more fun to get there because I had a different avenue of getting those items thanks to the Nemesis encounters. So this is really like props to the dev team for coming up with this. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that we're gonna get more stuff that keeps the gear grind interesting all the way. And now let's talk about the Harbingers and the Aberroth here. So you see the fight in the background all this time already. This is like one of my many kills that I've done with my hardcore shaman. And it was just a really cool encounter. I just kept coming back to this boss even though I was risking my character every time. And it was just so much fun. Like this Aberroth fight is really cool for someone like me who likes to do these like high-end challenges and these crazy boss fights. And you know, it's like a 10-minute encounter. It feels amazing. I think this is a really cool encounter that I've designed here, especially for like their first real pinnacle boss. I think a really good job here by EHG. I really enjoyed it. And also like the whole system built around this fight with the Aberroth. You have to unlock him, and then you have to fight the Harbingers. There's 10 different versions of these Harbingers. They each have their own special combos thanks to the boss time, like the timeline boss that they drain the abilities from. So each of those fights is a little bit different, and it leads up to this encounter in the end, and it gives you like a clear path forward. Like, okay, now you go higher corruption, and then go higher corruption again, and you go higher corruption again. You unlock more and more Harbingers, you get more and more perks, and it kind of felt good. I did all of that in one stream at the start of the cycle. I did a 32-hour blasting session to try to get the world first here for Aberroth, which I very closely failed. And yeah, this is roughly the time it took, around 30 hours or so. And softcore was a little bit faster, like I think there were like 25 hours or so when the first Aberroth was downed, but on hardcore it was a bit slower. But it was pretty interesting for sure. I really like that system because it has like a really clear progression path now with your characters. One thing that used to bother me in the past in 1.0, for example, was that there was not really like any tangible like goal or like anything to work towards really after a certain point. Like, yeah, you can push a corruption higher and higher, and I've done that just to like see and test the limits until my hardcore character dies. I went to 1000 corruption, sure, right? But there was not really like any kind of target, and that was problematic for me. At least for me, I always want to have, you know, something to work towards basically. And now I do. Now whenever I make a new build, I know, okay, I can, you know, I can work towards Aberroth. I can, you know, take down Aberroth with my build, and then this is kind of like the trademark of a build, you know, like this is like the minimum standard basically for a build now. You have to kill Aberroth, or else, you know, you need to improve your build somehow. So this is kind of like how I feel about this now, since there is this target. And okay, some builds are better at bosses than other builds, but you know, it generally just gives you this kind of power level check, so to say. Like, okay, there's a lot of like, skill involved in the fight, but you need to have a bit of damage, you need to have a little bit of sustain and a little bit of defense in order to do the fight correctly, even if you play it well. And in that case, it's like something that, at least for me, for making builds and stuff and for having like a goal, this works really well compared to before, where it was just like, okay, just grind for grind's sake. You get to level 100 and then what? You just keep grinding, trying to get better loot. Yeah, but for what, right? And now it's like, okay, you do the progression, you do the Harbingers, you kill Aberroth, and then you can say, do I keep going? Sure, why not? Or you just say, okay, I go next character. So this is what I really like about it. And I hope that we're going to get more stuff like this in the future as well, where we have this kind of like fixed difficulty target that you want to hit, you know, this Aberroth fight and, you know, the next boss fight, or, you know, a super dungeon, or, you know, something like that, you know, that is like a challenge, something that, you know, is like a goal to have. Like, I really like these things. And this worked really well, I think, in patch 1.1. So this was very enjoyable. The whole like race toward first and this whole like, you know, trying to make a character that is strong enough to take it down, especially on hardcore, that was really fun. So in that case, also props to EHG for making that system. I think that worked really well. Also this Forgotten Knights faction that goes with this, where you like unlock them one by one from the Harbingers, and you get a bunch of perks here. That was really cool. Also the fact that you can now stack your corruption up much faster, and a bunch of these like balance changes they have done. In general, I think EHG has done a great job with this patch by balancing out classes and builds much better. Now, of course, there's always these broken outliers or buggy stuff that, of course, needs to be addressed at some point. But this balanced goal of around 300 corruption for an endgame build seems to be a very reasonable target, both in the time investment that it takes and in the difficulty that it poses to the player. And you don't necessarily have to go to 300 corruption to be like inefficient or, you know, playing the game correctly or something. It's not like you have to feel bad for being lower than 300, but 300 is like kind of a good target, and afterwards the rewards start scaling down a little bit, and then after 1000 the rewards scale down even more than that. So you can still go beyond the 300 and get something out of it, in particular loot, not so much XP, but it's kind of like a nice little breakpoint, I think, where 300 is a good target to hit. So that was nice as well. And just these other like all-around balance changes like nerfing ward, I really enjoyed that. Personally, I've not been a fan of these like 50,000 ward builds. I've not really played those, and I find it stupid that those existed, but at least that is kind of a history now. And yeah, generally there's like lots of cool updates. I've played a shaman with avalanche here. I made a video guide for this as well. That was really fun. So you can check out the video as well. I've played the Diveborn Falconer again, and then also the Lethal Mirage Blade Dancer that I've been working on lately. So those all really were cool builds, new, interesting, unique items that, for example, made the Lethal Mirage possible, and other things that EHG has been introducing. And I think that despite the flaws that Last Epoch has, with still kind of like a lack of diversity in the endgame content, okay, we have these echoes and they have different objectives and different layouts and stuff, but they are kind of repetitive in the end. It's still really fun to play it, at least for a while for me. So while people ask me, do I prefer this or that game, I do like Last Epoch a lot. I wouldn't play it forever in the current state. Maybe we're gonna get there, who knows. Maybe we're gonna play Last Epoch as our main game at some point, and everyone else will as well. But for now, I would say it's not my main game. It's not gonna become my main game with what it has, but it is on a really good track with what has been introduced in both patch 1.1 and patch 1.0 last time at the launch, and I'm quite excited to see what the future holds here. I think one thing that EHG really has to work on is fixing bugs. There is a lot of bugs with skills in the game that either make certain builds really broken or just something dysfunctional. Now, it's not as bad as Diablo 4's bugs, to be honest. Diablo 4 is on a completely different level. But even in Last Epoch, we do have some problems like that. And it does affect sometimes, you know, like the power level of builds and the decision making. And it just doesn't feel good to play a build and you know it's bugged either in one way or the other. So that kind of sucks. Also, for example, there was like a recent incident again with the Merchants Guild where people found some gold dupe exploit or something like that. And now the entire market has crashed and Merchants Guild and everyone is upset. Yeah, so that happened in 1.0 already. That happened again in 1.1. That's kind of bad. So there are some things like that that I think ESG can also improve on. But in the grand scheme of things, it's looking really good for the game. And I can just recommend, especially now when there's a downtime and you're not going to jump into PoE, for example, in like 2 weeks. Why not Last Epoch if you have not tried it yet? Really good to play, I think. This is like a game that at least I will keep on the side for me. I will keep an eye on it and probably come back, you know, cycle after cycle. Maybe not every time, we'll see. But it is something that I definitely enjoy as like the overall composition of a game. And it seems like EHG is really trying to make this, you know, some kind of like, you know, not too hard, not too complicated, but also not too easy and too simplistic. Kind of like in between, for example, Diablo and Path of Exile. This is usually what they say about where they try to land, and they do that really well. And they put a lot of thought into the systems that they have in the game. So they are kind of slow at making the game, I would say, but whatever comes to the game is actually well thought out, and I appreciate that very much. Either way, I think that sums up for me the patch 1.1 cycle. I had a lot of fun. I would say 8 out of 10. So work to be done, but really good patch. I really enjoyed the boss system. I enjoyed Aberroth in particular, and just the overall balancing and the Nemesis encounters. So everything that was brought to the patch and the general idea of where things should be and where things are, it all kind of makes sense to me, and I like that. So for everyone who has not been playing Last Epoch yet, I would say LE log in. Otherwise, I mean, I will be putting out some more videos as well, and whenever I have time, I might jump back in and play some more Last Epoch, but I do have more stuff coming up in D4. I do have some stuff coming up in PoE, so I will also have my sights set on other games for now. So hope you enjoyed this here. Let me know what you think about Last Epoch, especially if you have played the cycle and the new patch, and maybe what kind of content you would also like to see from me, where you would like to see me maybe put in some work here that is not really covered yet in Last Epoch. But yeah, for now, this is what I have to share here. Hope you like this, and see you guys next time.